Samuel Longfellow, the youngest brother of the poet Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, preferred a life out of the limelight. But times of great injustice and social upheaval demand important decisions. Do you ignore or accept what's happening around you, or do you take action? For Sam, the answer was clear. He had the power and privilege to fight for a better world and threw himself into many causes. One of the most important to him was the fight for women's rights. It's hard to say exactly when Sam first became involved in the women's rights movement, or what sparked his interest in the first place. It's safe to assume his friends played a large role, as many of them, like his partner Samuel Johnson, publicly championed the cause. His family, however, lacked his enthusiasm. His brother Henry never commented on it publicly, and his sister-in-law Fanny dismissed it. Writing at one point that an acquaintance draws a parallel between men's advantages in the way of universities, travel, free intercourse with mankind, etc., and women's limited sphere, all which is to me highly absurd and untrue. For women are as free as men to cultivate their intellects if they choose, and have not the slavery of a profession to hamper them, if they have other lighter bonds. It makes sense that Sam often kept his growing radicalism from his family. Though he sometimes confided in his sister Anne, for the most part, politics stayed out of his family correspondence. He took on a much more public stance when he began serving as a minister in Brooklyn, New York, in the early 1850s. Living in a new city, with a circle of progressive friends around him, Sam began to openly involve himself in the fight for women's rights, specifically the right to vote, and frequently incorporated his beliefs into his sermons. In 1856, he wrote to Anne that he attended the Women's Rights Convention in New York. Not long after, friends asked him to speak at other rallies in New York and Philadelphia. Adding his powerful family name to the cause may have helped bolster support for the movement. In 1860, Sam attended the 10th National Women's Rights Convention, where he gave one of his most important speeches on women's rights. While suffrage remained a vital demand, Sam also argued for equal opportunity in employment. Let the wide sphere of work be open to women, that she may select from it, just as a man does, whatever her strength and skill are sufficient for her to accomplish. She is not to be shut up to a few poor, small, and wretchedly paid employments, but is to be allowed and encouraged to open to herself every variety of employment. He took it a step further, adding, "Wherein she shall be paid an equal sum with which a man is paid for doing the same work, a claim which has been too long ignored and set aside." Sam matched his actions to his words. 2 years earlier, in a controversial move for the time, Samuel opened his pulpit to his friend Lucretia Mott and let her lead the service. It was a triumphant success, and both were eager to try it again. As he wrote to his partner Samuel Johnson, "Whatever opinion they might have about women speaking in public, nobody could doubt Lucretia Mott was a truly ordained minister of God." Women often faced backlash for making their voices heard, in ways that some men did not. At the 10th National Women's Rights Convention, Elizabeth Cady Stanton caused an uproar after giving an impassioned speech about the right to divorce. Many demanded that it be stricken from the record entirely. "My face was scarlet, and I trembled with mingled feelings of doubt and fear," she later wrote. My emotion was so apparent that Reverend Samuel Longfellow, who sat beside me, whispered in my ear, "Nevertheless, you are right, and the convention will sustain you." The private show of support helped to rally her, and in the end, his words proved right. Her speech remained on the books, even though the fight over divorce continued long after the end of the convention. Sam continued to ally himself with some of the most prominent suffragists of the day, and argued for women's rights both inside and outside of the pulpit for the rest of his life. When public speaking grew too difficult for him, he continued to play a role behind the scenes, corresponding with other activists like Lucy Stone and sharing his thoughts on newer aspects of the movement, like temperance. Sam remained unshakably optimistic about the inevitability of suffrage. "I cannot doubt that the logic of thought will show itself in the logic of events, and that the time is coming when women will serve their country by their vote." While he never lived to see it happen, many in his family did. His niece Alice, a longtime champion for women's rights to education, was one of the first women in the Longfellow family to cast her ballot in a national election. Supporting women's rights, particularly suffrage, was a controversial and often unpopular stance in the 19th century. Despite this, the movement fought on, with men and women of all races pushing for a more equitable future. Yet some of the most prominent suffragists of the late 19th and early 20th century, including Stanton, increasingly prioritized the concerns of white women and excluded people of color. Stanton spoke against the 15th Amendment, which prohibited the government from denying a citizen the right to vote based on race, color, or previous condition of servitude. Other suffragists, including Julia Ward Howe, Lucy Stone, Frederick Douglass, and Sam Longfellow, staunchly supported the 15th Amendment as a critical step towards universal suffrage. Sam wrote, "I think that giving the black men the right to vote is the simplest way of enabling them to protect and defend themselves." By the early 20th century, most major suffrage organizations refused to ally with black women. With the passage of the 19th Amendment, most women of color remained disenfranchised. They would remain so until the passage of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. The legacy of the movement remains complex, and we are still grappling with its failings today. Sam Longfellow himself played a small part in a very large story that is still being written. He used his privilege to speak out against injustices he found wrong, and helped to support and uplift the voices of those around him. What does it mean to you to be an effective ally? Image credits to Harvard University, Library of Congress, the National Archives, and the Anne Lewis Women's Suffrage Collection.